So I thought that we would go back, do a little bit of a flashback. It's been a while now since we first saw this absolute beatdown, intellectual beatdown of Dave Rubin. Now, this is an infamous moment that has gone down in internet political history, period. There were a lot of memes to come out of this. My favorite one, personally, being competition will kick in, and him saying that intellectually I like that argument because it's this sort of self-aggrandizing statement that makes him seem like this guy who's really smart and who's really big, and intellectually I like that argument, and it gives off this vibe, and this exuberates this sort of feeling that this guy is actually intelligent of some sort, or that he's in any way of any substance, which is hilarious, by the way. He's of zero substance whatsoever, and it's laughable for anyone to say that he is. But basically what you're going to be seeing here is Joe Rogan and Dave Rubin. Now, a little bit of a preface to this specific clip that you're going to see. Prior to this, like, Dave Rubin was ranting about liberalism and lefties and identity politics and stuff, the usual Dave Rubin boring, tired old shtick. But what you're going to see is Joe Rogan, he's going to start to actually combat what Dave Rubin says. Because before this, I believe, like, right before this, like, Joe Rogan and Dave Rubin were agreeing on the estate tax, as if... I love that, by the way. I want to take... I love how, like, anybody who's not insanely rich cares about the estate tax, because it's not going to affect you, dude. It barely affects anybody in the United States. And you're going to pretend like that's one of the issues facing our nation? Oh, this oppressive estate tax that affects, like, I don't even know how many people it affects. It's tiny. I think it's like 0.2%. Like, are you kidding me? It's probably not even 0.2. I don't know what the percentage is. But Dave Rubin is going to go on a rant about building regulations, which he's totally in over his head. The guy has no clue what the hell he's talking about. But go ahead and check this out. We'll come back and talk about it.
Generally, what problem would you, everything you're building here right now, right? Do you want the government to tell you how to do all these things and all the regulations that you got to have your electric thing this far from this and like all
the regulations like that for construction are important, though. You do have to make sure that people don't do stupid shit.
But
make sure
generally,
you don't have a power line that's near a water line. There's a lot of...
But I would put most of that on the builders, though. They want to build things that are good. Now, I get it.
That's not true. Listen, people
people are going to build
corners all the time. Like, you have to have regulations when it comes to construction methods, or people are going to get fucked.
They cut corners when there are regulations anyway.
They do. They would cut a lot more if there weren't regulations.
I'm not totally...
If you go to third world countries and look at construction methods, they're fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why schools collapse on kids in foreign countries sometimes. Like,
well, I'm not telling you that I'm against all regulation, period. That's
okay.
That's where I said intellectually I like that argument, because you could make I think you can make a very sound argument that competition would force people to do better work. Like, if you're a plumber, you have a vested interest in doing the best plumbing job you can so that people will rate you on Yelp so that you will get more work. You don't have a vested interest in cutting corners. Now, you might, right? You're going to push it as much as you can to save as much time and energy and money as you can. Mm-hmm. But once you go over that edge, yeah, you don't want to be known as the guy that you tightened something too much so that you flooded the house. Or when you're building a house.
You're thinking logically, though. When people fuck things up and short things and do things terrible, they're not thinking logically.
But I don't think it's the government.
Heads.
I don't think it's the government that they're like, the government gave me this regulation, so that's why I'm going to do it right.
Well, if they didn't have any regulations, there'd be no incentive whatsoever to do it right.
No, there would be an incentive.
If they knew there were no inspectors, no one was going to check their stuff and make sure that their stuff was up to code. Listen, man, I was in construction my whole life. My dad was an architect.
Yeah.
I've been in construction since I was a little kid. You fucking need regulations. These guys, a lot of people that are in construction, they'll do whatever the fuck they can to make money, and it's not good for the people that have the house, because they might have that house for 5-10 years before that problem manifests itself. The people who are establishing these codes are licensed builders or people that have been involved in construction for a long fucking time, and they know what's safe and what's not safe. That's why those codes exist. It exists to protect the consumers. You can't just protect the consumers through the marketplace, because it takes a long time for these problems to become a real issue, and these problems could potentially damage everybody in the neighborhood. It's not just going to affect the person on this one lot. Like, if a fire starts, it burns all the houses in the neighborhood, or if a flood happens and it floods everyone downhill, it's a real problem. Like,
Absolutely.
you have to be real careful with construction.
I get it. And, my dad wasn't in construction, so I'm not privy to like all of that, the little stuff. But I genuinely believe that as a general level, people have a vested interest in, especially now because of phones and apps and Yelp and all of the things, doing good work, because that's how you will get more work.
I agree.
You're never going to remove the people who will do shoddy, shitty, malicious shit.
But you can keep them at bay with regulation. I think
so. This is where I'd say you can have some regulation.
Educated regulation. People who actually understand what's going on. And, make sure that someone doesn't do something stupid with a power line, or someone do something stupid with the way they constructed main beams where they're just subject to collapse. Like, that's important, because most people buying a house don't know what the fuck they're looking for. Most people getting a house built, they have no idea about construction methods, and they need someone to inspect things and make sure that it's up to code. That's why code exists. It's very important.
Yeah. So I'm not totally with you on that. Like, I do think most of it, probably 90% of it, would be who has the most vested interest to build a good house. It's the builder, because he wants more work. He doesn't want the house to collapse, because then he'll be out of work.
I'm telling you, man.
I got you though. I get it that
These
it
guys
will not
are
always
jerk-offs.
Yeah.
There's a lot
so
of them that are
construction may be a
jerk-offs.
specific thing. You know what I mean?
It's a dangerous thing too, because it's where you sleep. It's where your kids sleep. It's you just. I think there's a lot of idealistic notions about deregulation, and I think there's some consumer protection has to be put in place, because people don't have the time to spend all this time researching construction methods and making sure everything's done correctly, and be there and make sure that the joists are a certain width and they have a certain amount of support. Like, all that stuff has to be done by people who understand code.
Assuming that the government regulators understand code correctly and aren't just on the take, or just just basically just taking money and signing off on things. I mean, when I got my house,
they inspect things, man. Have you ever had a construction project done?
Yeah, well, I got my house last year, and we had to go through all the inspections and had several guys come back. We didn't build it, no.
Right. There's a big difference between an insurance inspector and a code inspector. Code inspectors are very different. When you're having a house built, and I've had construction projects where I had to explain to people and go through it with builders. They're making sure that the house doesn't fucking fall on you, that the power lines are done correctly, that all the electricity is done correctly, the pipes are laid in correctly, your septic system or your sewage system is done correctly.
Yeah. Do you think that could be privatized then? See, 'cause again, I just think it's an interesting
regulations.
Yeah.
How would it? How
that
would
you could have
there would be no incentive.
Well, no, you could have companies that their job would be to make
inspect.
sure to inspect, and you
but they wouldn't have the threat of law to enforce these things. Like, if someone is building something and they're not up to code, they lose their license and they can't build.
Right.
If you privatized it, what's the incentive for them to follow the guidelines?
Yeah. So this is where I'm not telling you that I'm calling for all this. I just think intellectually it's just an interesting space to argue something, because I think that there's more. The more that you can give to people to freely do what they think is right, I think generally they will. Like, again, I get it. There's going to be some real shitty construction people.
Yeah, so that's a beatdown that's, as I said earlier, is going to go down, and has gone down already, in the Internet Political History Hall of Fame, because as you guys just saw there, Dave Rubin, in the span of, I think the clip is like 6 minutes there, Dave Rubin, in the span of about 6 minutes, got exposed as a completely asubstantive, total 100% fraud on all accounts. The guy clearly comes in talking about something he has no clue about. He doesn't know anything about building regulations. He has no clue how any of it works, how any of it is. And one of the sad things about this is, if Joe Rogan didn't have personal experience with building, and if he didn't personally know about the inner workings of building and how it works in architecture and, building codes and building regulations, this probably would have got swept under the rug. Honestly, the rational people who watched this got lucky in that Joe Rogan was actually educated and had personal experience in the field of architecture and building, because otherwise it probably would have just got swept under the rug, like it's, just whatever, just move on. But he just totally 100% schools them there. Schools him, sorry. He's just completely schools Dave Rubin there, explaining that, you need building regulations. You can't, and he literally says it right there. He says, you can't just protect the consumer through the market. It's not going to work. And there's a big flaw in Dave Rubin's argumentation here because, A, he's assuming people will act rationally, but 2, he makes a jump in logic, which he says, I believe that people have an vested interest in doing good work because it will lead to more work. That's wrong. People have an vested interest in making profit. That's what they have an vested interest in. Now, the vehicle to getting that profit in their mind is not necessarily going to be doing good work, and oftentimes it simply isn't because, as Joe Rogan explains there, people cut corners all the time. People want to cut corners because it's easier for them, it's more suitable for them, and it's simply preferable for them. So there's this jump in logic that is totally irrational. It doesn't make sense. There is no jump between, okay, they want profit, so they want to do good work. No, that's not how it works. And then Joe Rogan has to educate him and explain that, hey, these are big risks because if a fire is started or if a flood happens of some sort, that doesn't just affect that one person. That affects society. That affects that whole neighborhood. So a fire can potentially burn down, and it probably will burn down more than just that house. It'll burn down other property too. Same thing with the flood. And another point Joe Rogan makes is he goes, hey, well, these kinds of things, building is something that benefits the worker in cutting corners. It gives a sort of benefit. It puts them in a better situation to cut corners because those housing, when you build a house, those problems, assuming you cut corners in the building process, those problems aren't necessarily going to manifest for a while. Do you know what I mean? Like, as Joe Rogan explains there, the problem may not manifest right away. In fact, most of the times it won't. Maybe in a couple years. People live in houses for a long time. And, even if you switch houses, I mean, the problem's still going to be there if it's never been fixed or it's never been addressed ever. So the point here being that the problem can manifest 1 year down the line. The problem can manifest 2 years down the line. The problem can manifest 3 years down the line. The problem can manifest 4 years down the line, 10 years, 20 years, at any point in time. And that's why building codes are super important because you only want people building homes who are actually, have the degree and actually are educated to actually do these building codes. Building codes are really, really serious. If you're going to build something, you don't have a building code, you're going to fail epically. It's going to be very, very bad. And so Dave Rubin is trying to go on this dumb libertarian rant. And he pivots to saying that, well, intellectually, I like that argument. Well, let's keep it real here, buddy. Your intellect goes as far as careerism. That's it. His entire being, by the way, is careerism. After watching a crap ton of Dave Rubin, I've come to the conclusion that this guy's just a full-on careerist. That's all that matters to this guy. Careerism all the way. The cash, the fame, furthering his career. Those things. Anything to do with his brand, the brand of Dave Rubin, where he just rips off his guest, basically. That's what he does. So the idea that he's presenting any argument that's intellectual is pretty damn funny. It's almost like that's a joke in and of itself, and I find that really laughable in the first place. So Dave Rubin got absolutely obliterated by Joe Rogan. It's hilarious to me how badly this dude got obliterated. Now, I did a video a couple days ago. I think it might have been 2 days ago or 3 days ago. I forgot. And it was a clip where Joe Rogan is talking about people in the political sphere who are just opportunists, who just switch their ideology because it's beneficial to them in ways such as financial gain and others, not just financial gain. There's other gains too, whether it be feelings or whether it be I'm on this team and I like it better on this team. There's more people on this team. There's a lot of different things and a lot of different ways to benefit from that. And he said, and I quote, how do you change that much? How do you change your positions that much in 2 years? Hey, man, I'm totally on board with you, Joe. You're on point there, dude. And I speculate he's calling out Dave Rubin. He's definitely calling out Candace Owens. This is my opinion. It's my speculation. But I do think, I don't know if he's calling out Dave Rubin or not, because he's had Dave Rubin on multiple times and seems like his friend, but he also gives him the beat down like every single podcast. Like when I say every single podcast, I mean all of them. And so you can go check out those beat downs all you want. They're pretty entertaining, but I have to say that Dave Rubin is a complete joke. Again, his intellect reaches as far as how far his career is going to go. Like I showed you guys the clip where he's talking about he wants to get on a mainstream media network. I covered a clip where he's on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News and he invokes God. Like he says, we can't control what God does. Hold on there, Dave. I thought you were okay. First of all, there was the whole atheist debacle that he had, but he never, ever, I've never once heard him invoke that. But when he's on Fox News and we know that he's eyeing a show there, he brings it up. Peak careerist. Everything I've seen of this guy proves that he's just a 100% careerist, and that's all he is. And that's just the sad truth. I mean, he's just a total loser. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Dave Rubin is a total loser. I don't know how else to put it. There is no other way to put it. So Joe Rogan putting the absolute MMA smackdown, intellectual smackdown, I should say, on Dave Rubin.